You know that well-worn adage of not owning a boat but finding a friend that does? Well, Portland Spirit has lots of ways to get you out on the river this summer, including jet boat excursions to the Columbia River Gorge, daily sunset dinner cruises, champagne brunch on Sundays, and their new happy hour cruises offered Monday through Saturday. Best yet, they have bathrooms on board, a luxury most friends' boats don't have, let's be honest. Celebrating 30 years as a locally owned and operated business, book a ride with Portland Spirit at portlandspirit.com. If you're looking for a place to recharge your battery and have the most summer fun, Salishan Coastal Lodge is your ideal destination. It's over 200 acres of every activity and vibe you could possibly want. There's golf, tennis, hiking, yoga, hot tub, spa treatments, and if you're only there for the zip line, they just added 2 more. Best of all, they have a daily yappy hour with refreshments for humans and pups alike. And CityCast Portland listeners get 20% off with the code CityCast in all caps. So go book your stay today at Salishan.com.
Portlanders are electing a brand new expanded city council this fall, and the candidates are flooding in. More than 80 people have already said that they're hoping to run for one of the 12 open seats. So this month, we're going to help you make sense of the race. Today on CityCast Portland, our host, Claudia Meza, is looking at who's running in East Portland's District 1. Oregon City Hall reporter Shane Dixon Kavanaugh is here to help us make sense of the crowded field. It's Tuesday, July 9th. I'm executive producer John Notarianni, and this is what Portland's talking about.
Before we get into this, I heard that you have a personal gripe about not being part of District 1. What's that all about? Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Well, first of all, I would say that I am so close to the District 1 border. I am in District 2 by just a hair, and I live in that sort of no man's land section between 82nd Avenue and the 205. And if you look at the way in which the District Commission carved up these 4 districts for Portland City Council districts, there is a section south of Division Street where you can go east of 82nd Avenue and be in District 1. But if you're north of Division, east of 82nd, but inside of the 205, you're still in District 2. So I kind of feel like a little bit that I got cut out of the action, so to speak. I think the other thing that I would say about
District 2 isn't as inviting to you as District 1? You feel culturally you're more District 1? Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, I guess I'm more of like a Winco and Olive Garden kind of guy than I am a New Seasons and Ava Jeans person. I think I spend probably more time at Lewitt Park with my kids than I do Laurelhurst Park.
I hear what you're saying.
So there's a little bit of that. I would also just argue or posit, at least in my opinion, that District 1 is sort of the most politically interesting district in Portland, both in terms of its political makeup, in terms of its ethnic and racial diversity, and then also the simple fact that, and I think most of your listeners would know that East Portland, when we talk about areas of the city, has been sort of the most historically ignored and underrepresented part of Portland. And so with this change of government and that we're going to start having district representation at City Hall, I can't think of a more sort of fascinating place to see this new form of government play out than in this particular district.
And let's talk about that real quick, Shane. Because as you stated, one of the promises of this new council by district model is that finally East Portland will have representation. So how is that factoring into the race so far?
Well, that's there's a few different ways to answer that question. I think just to sort of set the historical context, that prior to this upcoming election, there have only been 2 Portland City Commissioners who have served in City Hall who have lived east of 205.
Ever? In
Yes.
time continuum? Wow.
Former Commissioner Joanne Hardesty, who lost her reelection bid in 2022. And prior to that, Randy Leonard, who was a longtime Portland City Commissioner.
Did you ever run into them at Winco?
I've had some good run-ins with Commissioner Hardesty in the Montevilla neighborhood. And she also hangs out at Sailors sometimes, that Sailors Country Kitchen near Mall 205. So that's another great Commissioner Hardesty hang.
Sorry, I interrupted you. I was just curious. And just to make sure, like, what neighborhoods, like, can you shout out that are in District 1 for people who are just like, obviously not Laurelhurst. Is Montevilla part of District 1?
No, all of Montevilla is tucked into District 2.
Okay.
But so we have Park Rose, Hazelwood, Powellhurst, Gilbert, just to name a few. So
Gotcha. Thank you, Shane.
Yeah. So anyway, we've just been riffing. So what's the question again? I'm sorry.
How is that factoring into the race so far? Before I distracted you, you were saying, this is crazy because there's only been 2 candidates that have, lived basically in District 1, the entire history of city council, which is crazy.
It is a little crazy. Here's one thing that I'll also just sort of point out that at least I find mildly interesting. So there are a shit ton of people running for Portland City Council seats. I think we're up to like close to around 80 candidates as we speak. And yet I was looking through this earlier this week, and District 1 currently has the fewest declared candidates of any of the 4 districts. There's only 15 people running in District 1 as opposed to like 23. But I still thought that was kind of interesting, given that part of East Portland's identity being a sort of historically underrepresented area. Seems that it would be ripe for the conditions for a lot of people to sort of step up and get into the race. I think the other sort of important contextual piece to think about with East Portland is also an area that has faced some of the most pressing and persistent challenges, big and small, when it comes to Portland city government. I mean, if you want to look at sort of the highest number of shootings and homicides, a disproportionate number of them are happening east of 205 in this district. Same when it comes to, traffic violence, traffic fatalities, and deaths. I mean, for heaven's sake, most of East Portland doesn't even have sidewalks or paved roads. I mean, the most basic municipal services that one could expect from their local government have, consistently and persistently been in short supply here. And now we have this opportunity where there's going to be 3 city council members elected to represent this area. So right off the bat, we're going to have, come January of 2025, we will have more representatives living in East Portland than we have in the, previous iteration of the Portland City Council. So, wow, that's kind of wild.
It is wild. To me, I'm just like, if anything, all of this change, all of this growing pains is going to be worth it for District 1 finally having some representation.
You sound optimistic.
I am, Shane. I've always been optimistic about the charter reform. Are you not? Are you not optimistic about the charter reform? I said charter. That's not good.
Uh-oh. Not charter. Charter. Come on. Freudian slip. No, I'm a paid professional skeptic. So I
hear that. Yeah.
I have to shit on everything and everyone. That's like what they expect me to do at my job. So sorry.
It's okay, Shane. You don't have to apologize to me.
Well, like I said, I'm still just bitter because I got boxed out of District 1 and I've got to, Now
you got to shop at New Seasons. Sorry.
No way. No way.
Sorry.
No.
Hey, it's John from CityCast Portland. Let's face it, sometimes bad stuff happens. A serious injury, a catastrophic accident, even a wrongful death. It can really turn your world upside down. And when it does, you deserve unwavering support from a dedicated team. Yeah, you need a lawyer. Dia Moore Law Group has over 30 years of experience protecting the rights of Oregonians. Their team of skilled attorneys, led by the renowned trial lawyer Tom D'Amore, will work tirelessly to make sure your voice is heard and your rights are protected. Here's what one of his clients said. Tom fights for his clients from the first day they meet him through the last day of trial. So if you need help holding those responsible for your injuries accountable, contact D'Amore Law Group at 503-222-6333 or visit d'amorelaw.com to schedule a free consultation. They're committed to fighting for the justice and compensation you deserve right here in Portland.
Want to know one of my favorite sounds? Here it is. That's the sound I hear when I'm learning Spanish with Babbel. And if you want to learn a new language this year, I guarantee it'll be one of your favorite sounds too. I'm David Plotz. I'm the CEO of CityCast, and I've been doing Babbel for a few weeks, and it's been so much fun. This week, I've been learning lots of food vocabulary and how to order in a restaurant. This is one of the things I love about Babbel, is that it's about learning the language so that you can use it. As Babbel says, it's designed by real people for real conversation. So it's all based on real life situations. And these restaurant lessons are awesome. When I went to Mexico City last year with my girlfriend, I was a mute. But next time, I'm going to be ordering the sopes and las salsas picantes. Babbel has over 16 million subscriptions sold, plus all of Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. Here's a special limited-time deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Well, let's talk about some of the candidates. We picked out 5 candidates to discuss because as of today's taping, they are the only ones that have reached their contributor funds. So for those listening out there, that's how we picked them. And that's Candace Avalos, Jamie Dunphy, Steph Routh, Timur Ender. Mm-hmm. And then the last one, actually, I don't think has reached their contributor funds, but we're picking them because they're a pretty interesting candidate.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about Terrence Hayes. And Shane, for those who are kind of shaking their head about the contributor fund, do you want to explain what it is real quick, just for the edification of everyone else listening?
Oh, yes. Just a quick refresher on all of this, that here in Portland, we have a public financing system for candidates for local office. So that includes mayor, the city auditor, and city council members. Mm-hmm. And it's called the Small Donor Elections Program. And so what this means is if people participate in this program, they are limited by what the maximum individual contribution to a candidate can be. But if they get X amount of qualified contributors, and those have to be registered voters in the city of Portland, 18 years and over. Mm-hmm. If you get 250 individual contributors that qualify in this program, you will get a public match of up to $40,000, matching contributions between $5 and $20, 9-1. So if somebody is to give you a $20 political contribution, the city of Portland comes in and gives you $180 on top of that.
That's so cool.
Up to $40,000 in that first tier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So those who've made that are a bit more on their way, I would say.
Yeah. So I think I want to talk about 3 of these candidates together, then talk about another 2 of them. So I first want to talk about the candidacies of Candace Avalos, Steph Routh, and Timur Ender. First, just in terms of sort of the political makeup and composition of East Portland that we've seen in recent elections. This is a district or an area of the city that actually tends to skew a little bit more conservative, or we might just say moderate, by the standards of Portland city politics. This is an area where Renee Gonzalez beat Joanne Hardesty, who actually lives in this area, beat her nearly 2-1 in this area across the board in 2022. And we saw almost a similar sort of split in terms of the vote when it came to Nathan Vasquez versus Mike Schmidt in our May primaries. And I think that's sort of an important thing to consider when we are talking about Steph Routh, Candace Avalos, and Timur Ender, who all three of them are, without trying to take out too much of the nuance of each of these candidates, who I think are really interesting people and should be looked at sort of individually, one by one, but also all three of them are sort of unabashed, sort of progressive candidates who are running in this district. And that is in terms of sort of the issues and the framing of particular issues that they're talking about, in terms of who their endorsements have been so far, who they've been raising money from. So all three of them have a much more pronounced and decidedly sort of progressive bent and flair. Would kind of say that institutionally speaking, and we can see this both in terms of the amount of money raised, how many donors they've received so far, both Steph Routh and Candace Avalos have a lot more sort of built-in institutional support. It's going to be really interesting to see as things progress a little further along how they will differentiate themselves from one another.
So you're saying that their platforms are pretty similar? I mean, let's talk just real quick. I just want to dive in. Like Candace Avalos, executive director of nonprofit environmental justice group, Verde. I've heard of them. She's also served on Portland's Charter Review Commission on the Citizen Review Committee for police oversight and accountability. And then Steph Routh is an adjunct instructor at Portland State University School of Urban Studies and Planning. She also runs a consulting firm advising on community involvement, organizing, strategy, stuff like that. And
she had also served on the Planning Commission at the City of Portland for a number of years. Also was the former executive director of Oregon Walks, which is an organization that's focused on sort of traffic safety and alternative transportation, or transportation that's not exclusively sort of car-centric.
Right. And Timur Ender, a former transportation policy advisor for former Commissioner Steve Novick. And he also worked at PBOT as a planner. I can see why you're just like, these three, are of the same flavor. But they are unique in their, like, one of them feels a bit more environmental, but I guess if you're environmental, you're thinking about transportation. I mean, these are.
Just a couple of things to highlight with both of them. Once again, one of the things that we mentioned early on in this conversation is in terms of like transportation and basic transportation infrastructure. So East Portland, significantly fewer bike lanes or modes of transportation that are outside of cars. East Portland, an area where there's a high level of traffic deaths and traffic fatalities. East Portland, where we don't have sidewalks and paved streets in many residential neighborhoods. And here we have Timur Ender, who is a longtime transportation policy guy, project manager for PBOT. Similarly, Steph Routh, with extensive experience in terms of urban planning, the city's planning commission, also somebody who is also a very huge bike and public transit advocate. So I think it's really interesting that we have these, two candidates with a strong background around transportation-related issues in a part of Portland where, transportation issues have not been really adequately addressed in any way.
For sure. Let's talk about the next candidate, Jamie Dunphy. You wanted to speak about him alone, or did you want to also group him with Terrence?
Oh, no, I was just going to say Jamie Dunphy and Terrence Hayes fit less sort of squarely into the paradigm that I've kind of outlined with the former three candidates. Jamie Dunphy worked for Jeff Merkley for a number of years. He was a longtime policy advisor to the late city commissioner, Nick Fish. Currently works at the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. And also, something that I think sort of pops or stands out with his campaign and candidacy is that he's a longtime musician and has also been heavily involved in sort of the arts and music scene in Portland. He's on the board of Music Portland and has spent a lot of his campaign talking about, issues that are important to artists, musicians, and sort of Portland's creative sector. So he's, bringing a lot of that focus and attention. And I would also say that he has a slightly more moderate stance, I would say, on issues around public safety, homelessness, and livability than the other three candidates.
Well, let's talk about the last candidate, Terrence Hayes. He, from my knowledge, has not reached their contributor funds, but he's a pretty interesting candidate because he's Quannas Hayes' uncle, right? The young man who was killed by police in 2017. And he himself, Terrence, has served time.
Yeah, he was convicted and spent more than 10 years in prison on an attempted murder conviction. But also another really fascinating thing about Terrence Hayes' story is that he was convicted back in 2004 by a non-unanimous jury. And I don't know if the folks at CityCast have talked about Oregon's history of non-unanimous juries, which for many, many, many years, we were an outlier where there could be convictions of serious crimes in Oregon where you didn't have to have a unanimous jury to convict people of these crimes. So when the Supreme Court basically found non-unanimous juries to be unconstitutional, Terrence Hayes' conviction was actually vacated. So, he did have a felony conviction, but that felony conviction was later vacated after we changed our laws around non-unanimous juries in Oregon.
Yeah. So he's running on a kind of criminal justice reform, restorative justice platform.
Yeah. I mean, he has just a real dramatic personal story. And as a Black man in Portland who has both, served time in prison and, who is a close relative of a child who is shot and killed by Portland police, the issues of policing and public safety have, largely shaped his life and his family's life. And yet, one of the interesting things about Terrence Hayes, in terms of sort of his position on policing and public safety, he's a strong proponent of, continued sort of police reforms, but he is very open to working collaboratively with the Portland Police Bureau and local law enforcement.
Which is really interesting because he's been through the system. Well, thank you for going through those 5 with me. Let's do a lightning round. Just who else deserves a nod from your research of these candidates?
Well, I would say I'm intrigued a bit by Sonia McKenzie, who is a school board member out there and also works at the Oregon Community Foundation. I'm interested in her campaign and candidacy. I would also say that another person who has been working pretty hard and trying to get their name out there is David Lynn, who's another candidate out in District 1. And I think the last person that I'll mention is still not a formal candidate, but has been repeatedly rumored and still has time to potentially get into this race, which is former Multnomah County Commissioner Loretta Smith. And if she did, I think that would really shake up the dynamics that are already starting to play out in that district.
Why is that?
Well, I would say that, anybody who is a former elected official like Loretta Smith was at the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners, also ran for Portland City Council a couple of times, and also has strong institutional support. I mean, she spent years as a senior aide to Senator Ron Wyden. So given her name recognition and sort of her political support, she would probably immediately become sort of a front runner candidate in that race, especially when we're going to be electing 3 people from that district.
Well, Shane, thank you so much for your time and your expertise in this area. District 1 is one of the districts that I'm looking at closely and that excites me the most. It's not even my district, but I feel like I'm the biggest fan right now. I'm the biggest fan of everyone running, and I just hope that they get a good set of people that are able to look at everything.
I mean, I kind of agree with you, Claudia, that I'm also most interested in District 1, primarily because this will be the test case for our new form of government. and whether or not it is more effective and responsive to community and neighborhood needs. So once again, we take the most historically underserved, underrepresented portion of the city. We're going to give them 3 city council members, a new form of government, and we're going to see if there can be real, meaningful change in this area because of that.
Well, thank you so much. Seriously, Shane. I couldn't imagine doing this with anyone else.
Wow. High praise. Well, it's
Yeah.
always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, that's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.